My name is Lucy, and I'm 32 years old. That morning, when my phone buzzed with Mum's urgent text about an emergency family meeting, my stomach dropped. It had been 3 months since Grandma Eleanor's funeral, 3 months of awkward silence from my family. Now suddenly, I was needed urgently. As I drove toward my childhood home in suburban Massachusetts, something felt wrong. Before I share what happened at that meeting, let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever dealt with family drama over money, please like and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this unfolds. The story really begins with my grandmother, Eleanor Margaret Whitfield. She wasn't just any grandmother. She was a force of nature who built her fortune from nothing after her divorce in the 1970s. As a former bank executive, she understood money in ways most people never would. Every summer, while my siblings Jake and Madison spent their time at camps or with friends, I chose to stay at Grandma Eleanor's Victorian house in Salem. Those summers shaped who I am today. While other kids my age were learning to swim or ride bikes, I was sitting at Grandma's mahogany desk, learning about compound interest and dividend yields. She'd spread out the financial newspapers across her dining table, teaching me to read stock charts before I could properly write in cursive. "Lucy," she'd say, adjusting her reading glasses, "money isn't about greed, it's about freedom. The freedom to choose, the freedom to leave, the freedom to help those who deserve it." I was the only grandchild who showed genuine interest in her lessons. Jake, 3 years older than me, would roll his eyes whenever Grandma mentioned investments. Madison, 3 years younger, only perked up when discussing shopping or social media. But I absorbed everything like a sponge. By the time I was 16, I was helping Grandma manage her portfolio, and by 25, I had become her unofficial financial advisor. The last 2 years of Grandma's life were hard. Her health declined rapidly after a stroke, and I became her primary caregiver. While Mum Patricia complained about the drive being too far, while Dad Robert claimed work kept him too busy, while Jake couldn't be bothered to visit, and while Madison was too focused on building her influencer career, I moved into the guest room of Grandma's house. I managed her medications, drove her to appointments, and held her hand through the scary nights when she couldn't remember where she was. 3 months ago, Grandma passed peacefully in her sleep. I was holding her hand. The funeral was elegant but small, exactly as she wanted. My family showed up, of course, dressed in their finest black attire, dabbing at dry eyes with tissues. They stayed for exactly as long as was considered appropriate, then disappeared back to their lives. The will reading happened 2 weeks after the funeral. I'll never forget the look on my mother's face when the lawyer, Mr. Harrison, read the distribution. To my nephew, Jake Whitfield Jr., I leave 15% of my monetary estate, approximately $480,000, with the hope he finds his path. To my niece, Madison Patricia Whitfield, I leave 10% of my monetary estate, approximately $320,000, to be distributed in annual installments over 10 years. To my beloved granddaughter, Lucy Ann Whitfield, I leave 75% of my estate, including all properties, the main investment portfolio, and full control of the Whitfield Family Trust. The room went silent. $3.2 million plus properties, worth another $2 million plus investment accounts I didn't even know existed. Mum's face turned from expectant to shocked to furious in the span of seconds. Dad's mouth hung open. Jake's hands clenched into fists. Madison actually gasped out loud. "There must be some mistake," Mum said, her voice shaking. "What about her children? What about Robert and me?" Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitfield Eleanor left you and your husband each personal item specified in Appendix C, her jewelry collection for you, his father's watch collection for Mr. Whitfield. The fake congratulations that followed were painful to witness. Mum hugged me so stiffly she might have been made of wood. Well, Lucy, what a responsibility," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Dad patted my shoulder with excessive force. "Hope you know what you're doing with all that money, kiddo." But the real shock came when Mr. Harrison asked me to stay after everyone left. "There's more," he said, sliding another folder across his desk. "Eleanor established several trust funds over the years, all in your name. These weren't part of the main estate. They're separate entities, and you have sole control." My hands trembled as I reviewed the documents. Another $5 million in various investment accounts, all carefully structured to be protected from any potential family claims. There was also a letter from Grandma sealed and addressed to me. I opened it with shaking fingers. "My dearest Lucy." It began, "If you're reading this, then you know what I've done. You're probably wondering why I left you so much while leaving so little to the others. The answer is simple. You were the only one who understood that wealth is a tool, not a toy. You cared for me when no one else would. You learn not just about money, but about responsibility. Your parents and siblings have shown me their true colors over the years, and I've made my decision accordingly. Be strong, my dear. They will come for what you have. They will use every manipulation, every guilt trip, every weapon in their arsenal. But remember what I taught you. Your worth isn't determined by their approval. The accounts are structured to protect you. Use them wisely, live freely, and never ever apologize for what you've rightfully earned. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. 3 months passed after the inheritance was finalized, 3 months of strange silence from my family. I should have known they were planning something. The first sign was Mom's sudden warmth. After months of barely speaking to me, she called one Tuesday evening, her voice dripping with honey. "Lucy, sweetheart," she cooed as if we'd been best friends all along. "I've been thinking about you so much lately. You must be so overwhelmed with everything. Why don't you come for Sunday dinner? I'm making your favorite, that garlic roasted chicken you used to love." I hadn't had a favorite meal at home. Mum barely cooked when I was growing up, and when she did, she certainly never paid attention to what I liked. But I agreed to come curious about this sudden change. That Sunday, I arrived at my parents' house in Wellesley to find an elaborate spread. The dining room table was set with the good china, the one usually reserved for Christmas. Fresh flowers adorned every surface. Mum had indeed made roasted chicken, along with what seemed like every side dish known to mankind. "Lucy!" Dad boomed from his recliner, actually getting up to greet me. This was new. Usually he barely looked up from his TV when I visited. How's my successful daughter still crushing it at the firm? He'd never asked about my work before. As a financial analyst at a Boston investment firm, my job had always been too boring for family discussions. Now suddenly everyone wanted details. Madison appeared from the kitchen, actually putting her phone down for once. "Lucy, oh my God, your hair looks amazing," she gushed. "Did you do something different? You're literally glowing." Madison had never complimented me in her entire life. Usually she made snide comments about my conservative wardrobe or lack of social media presence. Jake emerged from the basement, something that typically required a catastrophic event. "Hey sis," he said, actually making eye contact. "I was thinking your apartment probably needs some repairs, right? I've got time this week if you need help with anything." Jake offering to help with anything was like witnessing a miracle. The man hadn't held a steady job in 5 years and spent most of his time gaming in our parents' basement. Now he wanted to do home repairs. Throughout dinner, the questions started flowing. "Managing all that money must be so stressful," Mum said, refilling my wine glass for the 3rd time. "You know there are professionals who specialize in large inheritances. I actually met one at the club last week." "The paperwork alone must be a nightmare," Dad added. "All those tax implications. You really shouldn't be handling this alone, Lucy." "I'm doing fine," I said carefully. "I have Grandma's financial advisor and my own lawyer." Mum and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. Of course," Mum said quickly. "We just worry about you. That's what family does." Madison jumped in with her own concerns. "I totally get it if you're overwhelmed. Like when I hit 10,000 followers, I needed a manager immediately. I can't imagine dealing with millions." As dessert was served homemade apple pie that I knew Mom had bought from the bakery, I noticed something else. Through the window, I could see a new Mercedes in the driveway, silver and gleaming. Our family had always driven sensible Toyotas. "New car?" I asked casually. Mum waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, just a little upgrade. We've been saving for years." But I knew their financial situation. Grandma had kept me informed about everyone's money troubles. There was no way they could afford a $60,000 car on their own. Later, while Mum was in the kitchen, I overheard her on the phone. "Yes, Patricia will have the money soon," she was saying. "Our daughter is handling the transfer. No, a few more weeks at most." My blood ran cold. Transfer. What transfer? I hadn't agreed to anything. When Mum returned, her phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and her face suddenly became grave. "Oh dear," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Lucy, honey, there's been an emergency. We need to have a family meeting tomorrow. It's urgent." "What kind of emergency?" I asked. "Financial matters that affect all of us," Dad said seriously. "We'll explain everything tomorrow. Can you be here at 2? The way they looked at me, expectant and calculating, made my skin crawl. But I agreed. As I left that night, I noticed Jake and Madison whispering in the corner, both typing rapidly on their phones. Mum hugged me at the door, holding on just a little too long. "Tomorrow will change everything," she whispered in my ear. "We're counting on you to do the right thing." Driving home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being hunted. My phone rang cousin Sarah calling from California. We'd always been close, the only family members who actually liked each other. "Lucy, heads up," she said without preamble. "Your parents have been calling everyone. They're telling people you promised to share the inheritance, that there's going to be some big redistribution. Aunt Diane is flying in from Florida. Uncle Stan cleared his schedule. What's going on?" "I have no idea," I admitted. "But I'm about to find out." That night, I barely slept. I reviewed Grandma's documents, checking and double-checking the terms of the inheritance. Everything was ironclad exactly as Grandma intended. But still, something felt very wrong. I called my lawyer friend Jennifer, giving her a heads up that I might need her help. "Keep your phone on," I told her. "I have a feeling tomorrow is going to be interesting." The next morning, I received another text from Mom. "Family meeting moved to noon. Please don't be late. This is important for everyone's future." I dressed carefully, choosing a professional blazer that Grandma had bought me for my promotion. If they wanted to play games, I would be ready. As I drove back to my parents' house, I noticed multiple cars already parked outside. This wasn't just a family meeting, this was an ambush. I walked into my parents' house at exactly noon and immediately knew I'd walked into a carefully orchestrated trap. The living room had been transformed into a makeshift conference room. Extra chairs were brought in from the garage, arranged in a semicircle facing a presentation board. And the room was packed. Uncle Stan was there. My mother's brother, who happened to be a lawyer, though he mostly dealt with real estate closings. Aunt Diane had indeed flown in from Florida, dressed in her real estate agent power suit. Cousins Mark and Jennifer sat in the corner, both looking uncomfortable. Even Great Aunt Ruth had been dragged out of her assisted living facility for this. But what really caught my attention was the professional setup. There was a projector connected to Mum's laptop documents, stacked neatly on the coffee table, and what looked like legal papers with sticky tabs marking signature lines. This wasn't spontaneous. This had been planned for weeks, maybe months. "Lucy, perfect timing," Mum said, guiding me to a chair in the center of the semicircle. It felt like being led to the witness stand. "We're all here because we love you and want to help." Dad stood up, clicking a remote to start the presentation. The first slide read, "Whitfield Family Financial Restructuring Proposal." My stomach turned. "Lucy?" Dad began using his businessman voice from his failed consulting firm days. "We've gathered today to discuss a serious family matter. As you know, families support each other through thick and thin." The next slide appeared titled, "Current Family Financial Obligations." I watched in disbelief as Dad listed out everyone's debts. $500,000 for my parents' failed business ventures and credit cards. $80,000 for Jake's student loans for a degree he never finished, plus credit card debt. $40,000 for Madison failed business attempts and IRS payments for unreported influencer income. "These are challenging times for everyone," Uncle Stan interjected, standing up with his legal pad. "But fortunately, we have a solution that benefits everyone equally." Mum took over, clicking to the next slide. "The Whitfield Family Trust Restructuring." She explained their proposal like she was presenting a Fortune 500 business plan. I would transfer the main estate into a new family trust. My parents would serve as trustees with equal distribution protocols. Everyone would receive monthly allowances based on their documented needs. "This is what Grandma would have wanted," Aunt Diane added. "She always said, 'Family takes care of family.' That was a lie. Grandma had specifically said the opposite, usually after another family member tried to borrow money from her. But I kept my face neutral, watching their performance unfold. Madison stood up next, and I noticed she was holding her phone at an odd angle. She was recording this. "Lucy, we all know Grandma wasn't in her right mind those last few years. The stroke affected her judgment. This inheritance situation, it's not fair to anyone, including you. You shouldn't have to carry this burden alone." "It's not a burden, but," I said calmly, "it's a responsibility I'm happy to have." "I say..." The room shifted uncomfortably. Mum's smile tightened. "Of course, dear. But look at these documents Uncle Stan prepared. They're very reasonable. You'd still have complete access to funds just with family oversight for major decisions." Uncle Stan handed me a thick folder. "I've worked with the best estate attorneys to make this transition smooth. All it needs is your signature." I flipped through the pages, my analytical mind catching the buried clauses immediately. This wasn't just about oversight. This would give my parents complete control over every penny. I would need their permission to withdraw anything over $1,000. They would have the power to override any financial decision. There was even a clause about family consultation for major purchases. which essentially meant they could veto me buying a cup of coffee if they wanted. "I need time to review this with my lawyer," I said. The room exploded. "Your lawyer?" Mum's voice went shrill. "Lucy, we're your family. Why do you need a lawyer to talk to family?" "Because you're asking me to sign legal documents that would fundamentally change the structure of my inheritance," I replied evenly. Dad's face turned red. "This is exactly the kind of selfishness we were worried about. Money changes people, Lucy. It's changed you." "You raised me better than this," Mum said, and actual tears appeared in her eyes. I wondered if she'd practiced that in the mirror. All those years of sacrifice, private schools, college tuition, and this is how you repay us. Jake stood up aggressively. "You were always Grandma's favourite, always her special little helper. The rest of us never had a chance. She poisoned you against your own family." "That's not true," I said. "You all had the same opportunities to spend time with her. You chose not to. We had lives." Madison shouted, her phone still recording. "We couldn't all drop everything to play nurse like you did. And now you think that makes you better than us?" Great Aunt Ruth, who'd been silent until now, spoke up with a quavering voice. "Eleanor would be ashamed of you, young lady, keeping all that money to yourself while your family struggles." The irony was rich. Great Aunt Ruth hadn't spoken to Grandma in 10 years after a fight about money, but I didn't point that out. Instead, I stood up. "I'm not signing anything today," I said firmly. "If you have a legitimate proposal, you can send it to my lawyer." Uncle Stan blocked my path to the door. "Lucy, be reasonable. Do you have any idea what this could lead to? Contested wills get messy. They destroy families." "Then don't contest it," I said simply. "We might not have a choice," Dad said darkly. "Your grandmother was clearly experiencing diminished capacity. Any court would see that." "Is that a threat?" I asked. "It's a reality, Mum said. "Sign the papers, Lucy. Make this easy for everyone." The room felt suffocating. Everyone was standing now, forming a circle around me. Their faces were masks of concern, but their eyes betrayed their greed. These weren't family members worried about my well-being. These were vultures circling what they thought was an easy meal. "I need to leave," I said, pushing past Uncle Stan. "This isn't over," Mum called after me. "We're having another meeting tomorrow. And Lucy, if you don't cooperate, we'll have to take serious action. Legal action." I turned back at the door. "Then I guess I better call my lawyer." As I walked to my car, I heard Madison through the window talking to her phone. "Can you believe her? My own sister is literally stealing from our family. This is insane." My hands shook as I drove away. They'd planned every detail, from the emotional manipulation to the legal threats. They'd even brought in extended family for peer pressure. But what they didn't know was that Grandma had prepared me for this exact scenario. I pulled over a few blocks away and called Jennifer. "How bad is it?" she asked immediately. "They want me to sign over control of everything," I said. "They have documents prepared, the whole family is involved, and they're threatening to contest the will. Come to my office right now," she said. "And Lucy? Don't answer any calls from them until we talk." My phone was already buzzing with texts. Mum, Dad, Jake, Madison, even cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Everyone had something to say about my selfishness, my greed, my betrayal of family values. I turned the phone off and drove to Jennifer's office, Grandma's words echoing in my mind. "They will come for what you have." She was right. They had come, and they weren't going to stop. That night at Jennifer's office changed everything. She'd called in her partner Marcus, a forensic accountant who specialised in estate protection. Together, we spent hours going through not just the documents my family had tried to force on me, but also the structure of Grandma's estate planning. "Lucy, this is sophisticated," Marcus said, pulling up account after account on his computer. "Your grandmother didn't just leave you money, she built a fortress around it. The main inheritance was protected by an irrevocable trust with me as sole beneficiary. The properties were held in LLCs with transfer restrictions. The investment accounts had two-factor authentication, with security questions only I would know based on those summers with Grandma. But the real shock came when Marcus accessed the full portfolio. "There's more here than the will indicated," he said, scrolling through screens. "Did you know about the offshore accounts?" "Offshore accounts." I stared at the screen. "Legal ones," Jennifer quickly clarified. "Properly declared, taxes paid, but structured in a way that makes them virtually untouchable by any contested will claim. There's another $5 million here, Lucy, $8.2 million total plus properties. Grandma had been wealthier than anyone knew, and she'd hidden it all in plain sight using the same financial instruments she'd taught me about during those summer lessons. "There's something else," Jennifer said, pulling out a sealed envelope from her safe. "Your grandmother left this with me 2 years ago with instructions to give it to you only if your family tried to contest the will or force you to share the inheritance." Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. "My dearest Lucy, if you're reading this, then they've shown their true colours. On this drive you'll find everything you need to protect yourself. I'm sorry it came to this. Love, Grandma." We plugged in the drive. Dozens of folders appeared meticulously organised by date and person. I clicked on the folder labelled Patricia and Robert, and my blood went cold. There were recordings, video and audio spanning years. The first video was from 5 years ago, my parents sitting in Grandma's living room while she was in the hospital for her minor surgery. They thought they were alone. Mum was going through Grandma's desk drawers while Dad kept watch. "The old bat has to have it written down somewhere," Mum was saying. "Account numbers, passwords, something." "Just hurry up," Dad replied. "We need to know what we're dealing with when she finally kicks it." I felt sick. There were dozens more. Parents discussing how to get Grandma declared incompetent. Jake caught on camera stealing Grandma's pain medication to sell. Madison using Grandma's credit card for online shopping sprees. But the worst was a conversation from just 6 months ago, my parents and Uncle Stan in a restaurant. "Once Mum dies," my mother was saying, "we contest immediately. Say she was manipulated by Lucy. No jury would believe a sick old woman would leave everything to a grandchild over her own children." "I can make that case," Uncle Stan assured her. "But we need everyone on board, the other grandkids too." "Jake and Madison are in," Dad confirmed. "We've promised them larger shares once we get control." There was more. Grandma had hired a private investigator to document my parents' financial crimes over the years. Insurance fraud from a faked robbery. Tax evasion through Dad's consulting business. Mum embezzling from the charity where she volunteered. Uncle Stan's elderly financial abuse cases, 3 settlements paid quietly to make them go away. "Your grandmother was thorough," Marcus said with admiration. "She knew exactly who she was dealing with." Jennifer pulled up another file. "Look at this. Your grandmother had a cognitive evaluation done every 6 months for the last 5 years of her life. Perfect scores until the very end. She also had 3 different law firms review and validate her will. She filmed herself explaining her decisions with a psychiatrist present to verify her mental state. The video testimony was dated just 3 months before her death. Grandma looked frail, but her eyes were sharp, her voice clear. "I, Eleanor Margaret Whitfield, being of sound mind and body, want to explain my testamentary decisions," she began. "I am leaving the majority of my estate to my granddaughter Lucy Ann Whitfield, not out of favoritism, but out of careful consideration of character and capability." She went on to detail every family member's financial irresponsibility and moral failings with documentation to support each claim. It was devastating in its thoroughness. "My daughter Patricia has stolen from me repeatedly over the years, taking jewellery, forging checks, and using my credit cards without permission. My son-in-law Robert has attempted multiple times to gain power of attorney through deceptive means. My grandson Jake is addicted to gambling and has stolen from multiple family members. My granddaughter Madison has no concept of financial responsibility and has already spent her expected inheritance through loans she'll never be able to repay." Then her tone softened. "Lucy is the only family member who has shown genuine care for me as a person, not as a bank account. She learnt the value of money through hard work and education. She cared for me when I needed it most, never once asking for compensation. She is the only one I trust to honour my legacy and use this wealth responsibly." The video continued for another hour, systematically destroying any grounds for contesting the will. Jennifer paused, looking at me with sympathy. "Your grandmother protected you from beyond the grave," she said. "But there's more you need to know." Marcus pulled up financial records from various banks. "Your parents have been spending against their expected inheritance. They've taken out loans totaling $300,000 in the last month alone, using the estate as collateral they don't have. Jake quit his job the day after the funeral. Madison has been promising investors that you'll fund her new business venture, taking deposits for a company that doesn't exist. They've been spending money they don't have," I said, the pieces clicking together. "That's why they're desperate." "Exactly," Jennifer confirmed. "And look at this." She showed me a legal document dated last week. They've already hired a law firm to contest the will. A big one. They paid a $50,000 retainer they don't have. Where did they get $50,000? They sold your great-aunt Ruth's house, Marcus said, the one she's supposedly still living in. They moved her to assisted living and told her it's temporary while they renovate. The depth of their deception was staggering, but then Jennifer showed me something that made everything else pale in comparison. Lucy, did you know your grandmother included a no-contest clause in the will? A what? Anyone who contests the will and loses forfeits their entire inheritance. Your siblings would lose their portions completely. Your parents would lose even the personal items. I sat back overwhelmed. Grandma had thought of everything. She'd known exactly how this would play out and had prepared for every move they might make. So what do? I asked. Jennifer smiled grimly. You go to their next meeting, but this time you won't be going alone. She was right. I had ammunition now more than I ever wanted. The question was whether I'd have the strength to use it. Looking at the evidence of my family's betrayal spread across the table, I realized Grandma had given me more than money. She'd given me the truth, and sometimes the truth was the most powerful weapon of all. The next morning arrived with a barrage of texts and calls. The family meeting was set for 3 p.m, and Mum's messages grew increasingly frantic as the hours passed. Please come with an open mind. We only want what's best for everyone. Don't destroy our family over money. That last one almost made me laugh. They were the ones destroying our family, and they'd been doing it long before Grandma died. I dressed carefully, choosing a black suit that Grandma had bought me for my first job interview. Jennifer insisted on driving with Marcus following in his own car. Remember, Jennifer said, as we pulled up to my parents' house, let them talk first. The more they say, the more they incriminate themselves. The scene inside was even more elaborate than the day before. They'd hired a caterer. A professional stenographer sat in the corner with her equipment. Uncle Stan had brought 2 associates from his firm. The dining room table was covered with more legal documents, financial projections, and what looked like a PowerPoint presentation about family values. Lucy? Mum rushed over, then stopped short when she saw Jennifer and Marcus. Who are these people? My lawyer and accountant, I said calmly. You said this was a legal matter. I brought legal representation. The room's energy shifted immediately. Uncle Stan's associates whispered urgently to him. Madison lowered her phone for once, looking genuinely worried. Jake stood up from the couch, his face already flushing with anger. This is a family meeting, Dad said coldly. We don't need outsiders. If you're presenting legal documents and threatening litigation, then yes, we do, Jennifer said smoothly. I'm Jennifer Morrison from Morrison, Chen & Associates. This is Marcus Bradley, CPA and forensic accountant. Uncle Stan tried to recover control. Well, this actually makes things easier. We can speak lawyer to lawyer. My clients have a very reasonable proposal. Let's hear it, Jennifer said, setting up her own recording device on the table. Mum stood up, wringing her hands in practiced distress. Lucy, before we begin, I want you to know this comes from a place of love. We've watched you struggle with this burden for months. I haven't struggled at all, I said. The isolation, the paranoia bringing lawyers to family gatherings. Mum continued as if I hadn't spoken. This isn't healthy, sweetheart. Uncle Stan took over, pulling out a new set of documents. We've revised our proposal based on family feedback. Instead of a full transfer, we're suggesting a partial restructuring. You would maintain 40% control with the remaining 60% distributed among immediate family members. That's generous, Aunt Diane added. You'd still be the largest individual stakeholder. Marcus leaned forward. And what legal grounds do you have for requesting any restructuring of an ironclad will that has already been through probate? Undue influence, Uncle Stan said confidently. Elder financial abuse. Ms. Whitfield here isolated Eleanor in her final years, becoming her sole caregiver, and systematically turning her against her own children. I have witnesses, Dad added. Neighbours who saw Lucy coming and going at all hours. Home health aides who were dismissed whenever they tried to provide professional care. The home health aides Grandma fired because they were stealing from her, I asked. The ones you recommended, Dad? His face darkened. That was never proven. Actually, it was, Marcus said, pulling out a folder. Eleanor filed police reports. 2 of them were convicted of theft. Would you like to see the court documents? That's not relevant, Uncle Stan said quickly. The point is, there's a clear pattern of isolation and control. Jennifer smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Speaking of patterns, should we discuss the pattern of attempted financial exploitation by the family? Lucy, I think now would be a good time. I stood up, my legs surprisingly steady. Before we go any further, there are some things everyone should know, I pulled out my laptop and connected it to their projector. The first image that appeared was a screenshot of my parents' bank statements. Mom, Dad, you've taken out $300,000 in loans against an inheritance you don't have. The banks are going to want that money back very soon. How did you get those? Mum shrieked. That's private information. It became my information when you used my name as a reference and Grandma's estate as collateral, I said. Clicking to the next slide. Jake, you told your bookie that you'd have his $120,000 by the end of this month. Want to explain where that money's coming from? Jake lunged toward me, but Marcus stepped between us. I wouldn't do that, he said calmly. Assault charges won't help your case. Madison, I continued, you've pre-sold $50,000 worth of products for a company that doesn't exist, promising investors that I'm your silent partner. That's fraud. Madison's influencer facade cracked. You're lying. I never said that. I played an audio recording from one of her investor meetings. Her voice filled the room, clearly stating that her grandmother's inheritance would fund the venture through her sister Lucy, who was totally on board. Uncle Stan stood up. This is illegally obtained information. It's inadmissible. In court, maybe, Jennifer said. But we're not in court, yet, although we could be if you continue threatening to contest Eleanor Whitfield's will. What are you talking about? Uncle Stan asked, but his confidence was wavering. I clicked to the next slide, the no contest clause highlighted in yellow. Anyone who contests the will loses their inheritance entirely. Jake Madison, that means your portions go back to the estate to me. Mum, Dad, you lose even the personal items Grandma left you. You wouldn't dare, Mum hissed. I wouldn't have, I said. But then you tried to ambush me to steal what Grandma left me to destroy her final wishes. So yes, I would dare. Jennifer stood up. But there's more. Marcus? Marcus opened his briefcase, pulling out a thick folder. We've documented extensive financial fraud committed by various family members. Patricia Whitfield embezzlement from the Helping Hands Children's Charity. Robert Whitfield tax evasion through false business expenses. Stan Morrison 3 settled cases of elder financial abuse. The room erupted. Uncle Stan's associates were backing toward the door. The stenographer was typing furiously. Aunt Diane was on her phone, probably calling her lawyer. You can't prove any of this, Dad shouted. Actually, we can, I said, clicking to the final slide. It was a still from Grandma's video testimony. Grandma knew exactly who you all were. She documented everything, every theft, every lie, every scheme. I played a portion of the video, Grandma's clear voice filling the room. The family watched in horror as she methodically laid out their crimes, their greed, their complete lack of genuine care for her. When it ended, the room was silent. Mom had tears streaming down her face, real ones this time. Dad slumped in his chair. Jake was pale, his hands shaking. Madison had dropped her phone. Here's what's going to happen, Jennifer said into the silence. You're going to drop any plans to contest the will. You're going to stop spreading lies about Lucy. You're going to pay back any loans you've taken using the estate as collateral. And you're going to leave Lucy alone. Or what? Uncle Stan asked weakly. Or we turn over everything to the authorities, Marcus said. The IRS would be very interested in your tax situation, Robert. The charity board would love to know about Patricia's embezzlement. The Bar Association should probably hear about Stan's pattern of elder abuse. You're destroying this family, Mum whispered. No, I said, finding my voice. You destroyed this family. You chose greed over love, money over relationships. Grandma saw it and she protected me from it. I picked up my laptop, packing it away. I'm willing to do one thing. Jake Madison, if you get financial counselling and stay in it for a year, I'll give you each $50,000. Not from the inheritance from my own salary. It's more than you deserve, but Grandma wouldn't want me to leave you with nothing. That's it, Jake asked. 50,000. That's 50,000 more than you'd get if you contest the will, Jennifer reminded him. What about us? Mum asked. You have each other, I said. And you have the knowledge that your schemes failed. Grandma protected me from you even after death. As we walked toward the door, Mum called out one last manipulation. Lucy, I'm having chest pains. My heart, it's too much stress. I turned back. Should I call an ambulance? She straightened immediately. That won't be necessary. I thought not, I said. Outside I could hear the shouting starting before we even reached the cars. Blame being thrown, accusations flying, the family turning on each other like the pack of wolves they'd always been. You did well, Jennifer said as we drove away. That couldn't have been easy. It was easier than I thought, I admitted. They showed me who they were. Grandma just made sure I was prepared to see it. My phone was already buzzing with messages from extended family, but I ignored them all. There would be fallout, choosing sides, the family drama that would unfold for months. But I was done being part of it. Grandma had given me freedom, and I was finally ready to take it. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within hours of the confrontation, Madison had gone live on Instagram, streaming a tearful rant about how I'd stolen her inheritance and destroyed our family. But she'd miscalculated her audience. The comments section turned against her immediately. So your grandma left you $300,000 and you're complaining your sister got more. Girl, check your privilege. Why should you get your sister's inheritance? She took care of your grandma, you didn't. This is embarrassing. Delete this. The live stream ended abruptly when someone posted a link to the investor fraud article that had just gone up on a local business blog. Apparently one of Madison's burned investors was a journalist who'd been doing his own investigation. Within days, Madison was facing 3 lawsuits and potential criminal charges. Jake's situation deteriorated even faster. His bookie, tired of waiting, showed up at my parents' house at 2 a.m. The neighbors called the police, and when they arrived, they found Jake's hidden stash of stolen goods in the garage items he'd been selling to fund his gambling. He was arrested on the spot. Mum's theatrical collapse on the lawn was captured by the Ring cameras and became a brief viral sensation on the neighborhood Facebook page. I found all this out through cousin Sarah, who called me with updates while I was packing up my apartment. Lucy, it's like watching a building implode in slow motion. Your mum's been calling everyone trying to get them to take sides, but people are backing away. Aunt Ruth found out about her house being sold and she's pressing charges. I'm sorry about all of it, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, there was no joy in watching my family destroy themselves. Don't be, Sarah said firmly. They did this to themselves. By the way, I told them I'm on your side. You're the only one who actually loved Grandma Eleanor. Over the next week, I moved into Grandma's Victorian house in Salem. It felt strange at first, walking through rooms still filled with her presence. But then I found her hidden letters tucked into books behind picture frames and recipe boxes. Each one was addressed to me, written over the years as her own form of diary. My dearest Lucy, one read, "Today you helped me balance my checkbook and asked why I didn't use online banking like everyone else. I told you I was old-fashioned, but the truth is I wanted these afternoons with you. You're the only one who sees me as a person, not a potential inheritance." Another from just months before her death. Your mother came by today pretending to care, but really checking if I'd updated my will. She actually went through my medicine cabinet counting pills, probably wondering how long I had left. But tomorrow, you'll be here and we'll make that banana bread you love, and I'll remember what family really means. I cried reading them, understanding finally just how much our relationship had meant to her. She'd been as lonely as I was, 2 outsiders in a family of takers. We'd saved each other. The house needed work, and I threw myself into it. I hired contractors, real ones, not family members, looking for handouts. I had the kitchen updated, keeping Grandma's vintage stove because I couldn't bear to part with it. I turned her study into my home office, keeping her desk exactly where she'd had it. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Dad showed up at my door. He looked terrible, unshaven, older somehow. "Lucy, please. The house is in foreclosure. Your mother won't stop crying. Jake's in jail. Madison's had a breakdown. You've won. Isn't that enough?" "I didn't win anything, Dad. I just refused to lose what Grandma left me. We're going to be homeless," he said. And for the first time in my life, I saw him cry. I could have felt guilty. Maybe I should have. But all I felt was tired. There are programs for people facing foreclosure. Mum's brother Tom has offered to let you stay with him. You have options. They're just not the options you wanted. You're really going to let us struggle. I'm going to let you experience consequences, I said. Something Grandma tried to teach all of us, but I was the only one who listened. He left without another word, and I watched him drive away in the Mercedes they couldn't afford. Later that week, I heard they'd had to return it to the dealership. Through it all, I kept working at my firm, but something had changed. The senior partners, impressed by how I'd handled the estate situation, offered me a promotion to senior analyst. I accepted, but I also started working on something else. Using a portion of Grandma's money, I established the Eleanor Whitfield Foundation for Financial Literacy. It was specifically designed to help women understand money investments and estate planning. Within a month, we had our first workshop scheduled. I met Christopher at a financial planning conference, where I was